I've had somebody actually be like, when do I get to hang out with my friends again? Depends on your friends, you know? People have said, when does it become normal? When do I get to eat normal? Depends on your addiction, but probably never if, like I said, like if we're defining normal as addiction behavior. It's such a strange thing because with food, again and again I go back to other addictions, but with food it's like, if you are addicted to cocaine or to crack, and you were friends with a bunch of crackheads, then when you came out of it, you would understand that to stay clean, you have to stay away from those people. It's not different. If you have friends who are always eating, or if that's how you relate to people, you either you're gonna need to find a new way, and if you can't, then those people need to go, and that's reality. If you're in a relationship with somebody who abuses food, and you can't make somebody else get clean, so you have to look at it like this relationship or my sobriety, and that's a scary thing, but people make those choices over alcohol and drugs all the time. It's the same thing with food. You can't do the same thing and expect change. There is no change if there is no change. It's not like everything has to change. It's not like you're never going to be normal. I mean, it's kind of like redefining what normal is. And if normal was addiction, then do you really want to be normal? I mean, no. You know? It's just a matter of finding your triggers and your weaknesses and then addressing them. And I think that's one of the biggest things. When people are alcoholics, they create a new life where they avoid alcohol. And when they are drug abusers, they create a new life where it's easier to stay away from drugs. But with food, you are going to be confronted with food every day. And the only thing you can do is alter how you confront the food. How your attitude and your thought process on it, how you're going to go through it. I made myself rules and I stick to them. And that might seem strange to some people, but I mean, if I don't have my rules, then there's just this chaotic world of food and reasons to abuse it. So part of making a life that's easier for me to live sober is making a life where there are restrictions, and I don't feel deprived by that. I feel empowered by that. I feel good and healthy and happy. And when I think about if I just took those restrictions and those changes away, I feel like because I'm in a different mental place, I could probably still stay sober, but it's a scary scenario. It's a place I don't want to be in, because I never want to go back there. I never want to have a reason to abuse things again or to use food again. And you know, when you're talking about how to change your life to make it easier to stay sober, commonly it's people, you know, and this doesn't have to be just like people you go out to eat with. It could be people who are emotionally abusive. It could be relationships that you know are unhealthy. They don't necessarily take you to a restaurant, but they make you feel like you need to use your drug, which is food. So people, you know, if you have an aunt who is constantly down on you, or you know, a grandmother who never did like your dad, so every time you go around you're made to feel bad about who you are, whatever, you know, like there's 1,000 things in family dynamics, there's 1,000 things in your office work situation, there's 1,000 things that can make a person be a trigger. And no matter what the relationship to that person is, you have to change it. If it's a family member, it's going to be harder. Maybe you don't want to just cut that person out. But maybe it's time to say, we need therapy. We need to go. Like, I need this for me. And either you're willing to do it so that we can have this relationship, or you're not. But the relationship as it is unhealthy and I can't have it, you know? I'm not talking about just ending things. I'm talking about ending the way things are now and creating healthier things and healthier bonds. And if they're unwilling, then you understand where you stand with them, and that's sad and it's scary, but it's true. Um, you know, places, trigger places. I told you, or I don't know if I did, but I mentioned, I think to somebody the other day, um, was fast food the only food I've used? No. But it was, it to me, like, was the epitome of what I was doing to myself. So it's something I have to avoid. And I used to use it a lot on the road, right after the hurricane and stuff. And the other day, I stopped at a McDonald's that I had not been to since I used to seriously binge. And I can't describe how I felt being there. I felt weak and scared, and like the whole last year amounted to nothing being in that parking lot. And it is amazing that a place can hold that power. Did I use? No. But would I want to go back there? No. It was very daunting and hard, and it used a lot of willpower and energy. Um, and finally, things that remind you of using, things, you know, that trigger you to want to eat. If it's an ex's stuff that you can't make yourself throw away, but every time you see it, you feel like you were a fat failure who couldn't keep a man or woman or whatever, then it's unhealthy and you need to get rid of them. If it's a loved one's item that every time you see it, you feel so sad that you need to use, then it needs to be put out of sight and out of mind, because honestly, those things are triggers and you need to do your best to find a new way to live. And you can't do that by holding on to things or letting things have power over you. I try really hard not to let myself get over hungry, starving, because I find it hard to like hear my body's signals, because you are hungry, and so you are listening to your body and you're naturally eating a little faster, but then that instinct to overeat kind of creeps, and it's easy to do if you're not extremely careful. So I try to avoid being hungry at all, like extremely hungry. I mean, hunger is fine, but like not planning a meal or skipping like 2 meals because of being rushed. That's just unacceptable for me and my plan of attack. I used food when I was emotional. So for me, I am now extremely careful about using food when I'm upset, regardless of whether or not that food is healthy and pre-planned. If something happens to me, like this is a really petty example and it's not real, but I'm going to use it. Let's say that for lunch I have brought brown rice and salmon and asparagus. So it's a healthy little meal. And cats breaking things. Anyway, so it's a healthy little meal. And I'm all excited about it. It's going to be good food, right? And then my boss and I get into a disagreement right before lunch. And now I'm upset and I'm just I feel like I can't control work and I can't control my emotions and I can't control anything, but I can eat. So I go get my meal and I'm staring at it, and I know that if I eat in that moment, I will be using food. And I don't let myself do it. I pray and I meditate and I bring myself to a different place, because if I use, even though that's not a trigger food, and even though technically I would still be sober as far as my sobriety plan, I wouldn't, because I would be using, and using even in the smallest form cracks the foundation, and you can't build a kingdom and a solid fortress on a cracked foundation. So that's one of my high risk times. I just talked about being angry or upset, and I think that lonely was a big one. I think that lonely was a big one. Because when I started using food, I felt really alone. And it's really a horrible alone when you are surrounded by people who are supposed to love you. And I think that at the height of my using food, I felt my loneliness because I felt like somebody should see how bad this is. Somebody should notice how hurt I am. Like, I know I'm lying and I know I'm covering it up, but it just seemed like if anybody in my life knew me and loved me and cared about me, they would be able to tell that something was wrong. And that perpetuated the feeling of being completely isolated, even though I was surrounded. And it just kind of snowballed itself into something horrible. And I still feel like that every once in a while. I feel very much like I'm a really good talker and I'm really good at communicating, but when something really upsets me, I kind of shut down and I feel very isolated. But I have learned to try to like work through that, and not to self-medicate with food. I have fibromyalgia, and part of that is fatigue. Sometimes I don't sleep well, sometimes I sleep a lot, but I still am just forever fatigued. If I'm in a spell or if I'm having a outbreak, I don't know what you would call it, but and it's like at those times I really want to snack, and eat and just like lose myself and just crawl into bed and whatever. I have found healthy snacks, or when I do want to just hang out and snack. Nothing's wrong with snacking. You know, you just need to know the difference between what you're doing. Like, don't eat because you're hungry when really you just want to snack, and don't just continue to snack just because you want to just gorge yourself. But I do have healthy snacks, and I do have my little pity party moments, but I have them very planned out, like how they're gonna go, so they don't get the best of me. You know, and I find that the end of the day for me is a good time, because if I've done good all day, it's easier to finish it out. So for me, my trickiest part of the day is the morning. I have to start the day in attack mode so that I'm making all those right decisions, and it's easier to keep going with that. Because if I start the day kind of crazy, or like kind of with junk food or whatever, I generally want to abuse food. And it's hard. And I will admit right now that while I have remained sober, it has been at the cost of like petty ridiculous fights sometimes. Like, you know, I'm so angry that I can't abuse my drug of choice, the food, that I lash out at the people around me. And I think that's a very normal thing for a recovering addict, but that doesn't make it okay or easy for everybody to deal with, you know, honestly.